Hello. So I try to keep my talking about herbs on a real rationalistic level. And I like to do that because I work as an herbalist, okay? I consider it to be a job. And I don't really like when things get too wooey. Like I'm a rationalist. I am a very open person, but nonetheless I'm a rationalist. When people talk about like plant spirits, I tend to like tune them out. And like sometimes I feel like that's really valid. Like if people like have like certain experiences, then sure, like if it like is meaningful in like a clinical practice, I'm interested. Like if someone had a dream of a plant and then they use it, that's interesting. But for the most part, I like to be like keep it empirical rather than more wooey. So I wanted to give that little disclaimer because I'm going to be talking about Yarrow. And Yarrow has really immense clinical application, and it's also a plant that it's just staggering in how well it works in certain situations. And so it's staggering enough where I can't help it. I really can't help it. I think of it as a bit magical. So Yarrow. Yarrow is flowering right about now. It is about the summer solstice. It has this cool plane that the flowers are on. They're very level. It's in the it's Asteraceae, or is it Compositaceae? I don't know. I don't know what the taxonomists are doing right now. But anyways, it's in the aster family, and it is just such a useful herb for wounds. The first time I used it, I had this cut I got on my finger, a fairly deep cut, and I was like, oh, what do I do? And this person was like, just chew up some yarrow and put it on. And I was like, okay, so I did. The cut just closed up. Like, I'm not exaggerating, it just closed up and it was pretty much healed. And it was like a fairly deep cut that was bleeding. So it's really good for wounds. It's also good for bruises. It like helps to prevent blood stagnation. So just yesterday, like I hit my shin really hard on a loading dock at the farm where I work, and it like really was painful. And I was like, oh no, I'm gonna get a horrible bruise. But luckily, I always carry some yarrow tincture with me. I put it on. I did not form a bruise. There was no black. There was no blue. It like the blood just sort of got sucked up. So it's really good for blood stasis as well. And I've read accounts of its use where, like Matthew Wood, in his first aid publication, which I'll put a link in the description for because I've been referencing it so much, and yarrow is like kind of the archetypical herb for first aid. He tells the story of, I believe, of Margie Flint, who's a herbalist in Marblehead, Massachusetts, where there was this boy who was skateboarding and he fell off the skateboard and hit his kidney and he was having internal bleeding, and the doctors couldn't do anything about it. So the desperate mother went to an herbalist and Margie Flint was like, okay, like give him some yarrow, and the mother gave the son some yarrow and it healed it. So it's good for internal bleeding as well as external bleeding. Matthew Wood says that the more arterial spray there is, the better yarrow works. So it's good for nasty wounds. He also says it's contraindicated for passive hemorrhage, which is when there's sort of like this dark ooze. Interestingly, though, I read in America Materia Medica and Pharmacognosy by Finlay Ellingwood and John Uri Lloyd that it is indicated for passive hemorrhage. So just something to consider. And as I mentioned, it's also really good for bruises. I had a friend who really hurt her foot in a trampoline accident. She did a backflip off a trampoline, and it caused a lot of intense and ongoing swelling and bruising. And I was pulse testing her. I was taking her pulse and putting different tinctures on her wrist. And I put yarrow on her wrist, and her pulse just was like dramatically changed, and she felt it. It's like, and then I just was like, can I put it on your foot, this tincture? And she was like, okay. And I put it on her foot, and it was all like, it was all dark colored from stagnant blood. And I watched in awe as the bruise went away. It went away right in front of my eyes. And so there's that. And yarrow is one of the few. It's one of the plants I've dreamt of, and then immediately used it. So I had this dream of it, and like I dreamt of it, and then that night, like that day I got like a tick bite, and it was really itchy. It was like an itchy tick bite, and my understanding of the energetics is that insect venom causes a depressed tissue state, and so it makes it cold energetically. It slows everything down, and it can make it so cold then it gets hot, like it starts to like kind of rot, and that's putrefaction. And Yarrow is specific for putrefaction, so I put it on the tick bite, the itchy tick bite, and immediately the itch went away, and it helped with that. And then I had a coworker who had indigestion and felt this affinity for Yarrow, so I gave her some Yarrow tincture, and she, she was like, she's redheaded, and she had a tongue that had this like feathering down that looked like a yarrow leaf, which Matthew Wood says is an indication for Yarrow. And I gave her the Yarrow, and and she said that her indigestion, her like nervous indigestion, went away. So it works on the stomach as well, especially like people would take it cold, I believe, for its stomach and stomachic and diuretic application. I also carry it around. Again, it's another Matthew Wood indication, but I carry it around with me because he claims that it has a certain magical protective influence, so it helps to protect against the sort of wounds it heals. And so I carry it around in hopes that it makes it less likely for me to have serious bloody wounds. And it's also been used for fever. It helps, since it helps control blood, it helps, it works as a diaphoretic. I have not used it as a diaphoretic so much. I tend to use bone set as a diaphoretic because I consider bone set to be a bit more powerful, but I also have heard a lot of anecdotal evidence from my peers that for high fevers, if you give Yarrow, the fever goes down. Like it will peak an hour after Yarrow is given and then lower. And again, from the eclectic textbook, they talk about how Yarrow is really good for like fevers above 104 is what I think they say, and that it is like a certain remedy. So good for fevers. It's been used for inflammation when there's like extra swelling of blood for like again controlling the vasculature. And an old-timey English name for Yarrow was nosebleed plant. So if you smell it, like it can cause a nosebleed, which is something it cures. So it apparently in Matthew Wood again, I think in his book of Herbal Wisdom talks about one woman who drank a lot of it so much she started to urinate. She would urinate blood. So there's a homeopathic element to Yarrow in that it causes what it cures, but in smallish amounts it can be really, really helpful. And yeah, it's a stunning plant. The best Yarrow to harvest is one that grows on the worst soil. It is much stronger. You can make a tincture of the flowers. You can dry the flowers, and you can really use small amounts. In my experience, for most things, it's pretty bitter. It tastes. It's like kind of like the archetypical medicinal taste. So, yeah, that's Yarrow. The best parts are the flower tops. Those are the parts that are the best. Oh, and another thing, it also has a somewhat numbing effect. Like the roots are, if you've ever had spilanthes, they're more numbing. They're also Asteraceae. But yeah, it's somewhat numbing. But flowers are what you want. They bloom maybe for a month, and like on different sides of a hill, they'll bloom at different times. You want to get them from poor soil, sandy, that are exposed in the winter. And it's really, like, if you have one herb on hand with you, I'd say have Yarrow. Like, it is really, really, really useful. And just maybe, magic. So, thank you so much for talking herbs with me. And look forward to talking herbs sometime soon. Hope you have a wonderful day. Make friends with some Yarrow. And look forward to chatting soon. All right, take care, and bye.